All right, let's get started, everyone. Welcome. My name is Paul Caron. Thank you very much for taking the time. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on some introductions. And before I start, I want to mention that questions are welcome at any time. So if you have a question, use the Q&A button at the top. We may address some of them as we go and others at the end. And if we run out of time, please just email the questions directly to me. I'll have my contact information up there. So just by way of introduction, I created Caron in 1999, Caron Business Solutions, that is, because my mother created me, and I'm called Caron. But we're in our 26th year in business. We have team members in North and South America and clients really all over the world, including Canada, Peru, Africa, the US. One of our newest clients is in Alaska, which is near and dear to my heart since I'm from the north of BC. And my first dog as a child was named Sitka, named after Sitka, Alaska. So what goes around comes around. So today I'm going to talk about growth. Most companies want to grow, and an ERP solution really is an essential tool to support that growth. And I'm going to start today by talking about some of the challenges that we face when we grow and how kind of the normal way, if you uh, can use that term, of ERP implementation really adds to those challenges. And then I'm going to suggest a different approach, which is to use Acumatica early on in your growth and how the design and approach of Acumatica and our firm actually reduces some business challenges. So challenges, we've been doing this for a long time and we've served clients of various sizes. We see really a theme where two of the main challenges that we talk about are one, conversion issues, and two, software functionality. So just to back up a little bit, we deal with tier 2 ERP software. And to define what that is, tier 1 are products like SAP, Oracle, IFS might fit into that, Microsoft Finance and Operations, which is their old Exapta product. These are very, very expensive software packages meant for very large organization. And on the other end of the scale, entry-level programs are, we could say, call them tier 3, QuickBooks, Sage 50, FreshBooks, Zoho. Those are all examples of the quick and dirty ones that are pretty cheap in a lot of business to start with. And tier 2 is where we live. It's Acumatica, Sage, Microsoft Business Central, and other programs like that. So when we started our business, we worked with ACPAC, which was the previous name of Sage 300, and we worked with Microsoft Great Plains, and now our focus is really almost entirely on Acumatica, a cloud-based solution that's headquartered in Seattle, and in the tier 2 space, it's the fastest growing ERP solution. So thinking about these challenges, I want to talk about data conversions first. And I want to start off by saying it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have a healthy fear of data conversions. And if you allow me a short diversion here, let me just talk about fear in general to explain where I'm coming from. So a phobia is a very common example of a fear. It's a persistent, excessive fear of an object, person, animal, activity, situation. Phobias are the most common anxiety disorder, and they're really considered irrational and unrealistic. And if you look at the top 5 phobias in North America, you can see why they seem very irrational. 14% of North Americans are afraid of bodies of water. 18%, maybe this isn't so irrational, are afraid of medical procedures. Number 3, zoophobias, fear of animals, fear of dogs, snakes, and spiders, and this sort of thing. That affects 22% of the population. Then the number one fear, which we've all heard of before, is glossophobia, the fear of public speaking, which affects 25% of people in North America. And I think we'll all agree that a reasonable goal is to reduce our how these phobias affect us, to try to get rid of them in our psyche. But I want to talk about a phobia that is not irrational at all. And those of us who have lived through the trials and tribulations of ERP data conversions will understand it very well. So convertophobia is a word that I conveniently just made up, and it is a perfectly legitimate fear of ERP data conversions. So what I want to talk about right now is how to avoid this phobia by picking the right ERP solution wherever you are in your growth journey and sticking with that. So picking an ERP solution that can grow with you. The assumption I'm going to make here is that businesses want to grow. It's there are some, I suppose, that don't, but most businesses do. And if you look at some of the mission statements of a selection of businesses that I picked off the internet, technology firm wants to drive integration and innovation and growth, landscaping company that wants sustainable growth, an eco-friendly product company with sustainable growth, and a mining company, rapid growth of resources. Very, very common to see that. In fact, about 99.9%, according to research.com, of businesses in North America are small businesses. And only 56% of those use accounting software. So, when you think about starting a new business, you've got a lot to worry about. You've got business licenses, you have to hire staff, and maybe you have patents, you need to get funding. So, the thought of business software beyond like Excel is typically not top of mind. But as your business matures, there's some signs, there's some pretty good indicators that it's time to think about some back-end software. And just like, the old rule about sailing is when you see a storm approaching, the best time to take down the sails is when you first think about it. So there are going to be some reminders as you grow your business and things to think about to say, let's get ourselves an accounting package or an ERP software program. One is the manual errors keep increasing. It's causing problems with you, and you need to have a solution for that. You're growing fast and you're starting to lose control of things. That might be a sign that, okay, you actually need a system, manual systems for sure, but an ERP system might be something to add at this point. You need more access to information than you're currently getting from your paper reports or your spreadsheets with multi-columns, and you need it fast. And the manual tasks that you're doing are just taking too long. It's slowing down your growth. And of course, every once in a while we get an email or a letter from that famous government department that says they want to audit your books, and guess what? Your books are all over the place. These are some pretty good signs that you need to look at an ERP solution. So what does a small business do? Well, the idea is go out and buy QuickBooks. It's easy. You can download it. There's setup wizards, and you get using it very quickly. The theory of this plan A, if you will, is, get started on entry-level software, and then when you grow and you need more functionality, let's then move to an ERP, and we're going to use that dangerous word, data conversion. There's our first opportunity for data conversion. And then later on, when we become a multi-billion-dollar organization, we're going to get SAP involved in here because what the heck, we deserve it. Think of all the money we'll save. All we have to do is convert. But I want to give you a bit of a different view of this approach. If only life were that simple, we know that every business has got common problems that we have to deal with. Staffing is a huge one. Demand, you have to make sure people want your product. You've got economic conditions and elections and all these sorts of things that make things difficult. But there's another problem that's encountered with your success. And that is, if you started with entry-level software and you're successful in growing your business, you've outgrown it and you've got to change, right? So when that happens and you call a consultant, you're faced with your first data conversion. And no one, in my experience anyway, ever said, I would just love to do another data conversion. It's something that I just enjoyed so much. But there's some reasons why no one loves them. Is they're very expensive and they're disruptive. And conversion to an ERP solution can cost tens of thousands of dollars and take 3 to 4 months easily. If your software licensing scheme is user-based, then as you grow, you've got other problems. You're going to be paying more money to use the software more simply by the fact you want more people on the system. So it really does work against you. The other thing about conversions is it takes time away. You've got a team and you want to use experienced people on this data conversion, so their time is taken away from generating revenue for the company. And learning software that's new to the group is difficult. Everything's different. All of the stuff we used to do has changed. And from that, you start to get some pushback from staff that are maybe very valuable to you, but simply not accepting the new way of doing things. So this ideal world of plan A that I talked about before, it kind of moves to the brutal truth, which is not as pretty a picture. On the right, I've assumed that you've done well with your business. In year 3, you want to get that shiny new ERP system in there. So the factors I mentioned before, they all transpire against you, and you've got to take your eye off the ball, and profit can become a loss. And again, perhaps your growth just continues, and in year 5, you're moving to a tier 1 ERP, but look at your profit line. It's just not there. You've wasted significant amount of money on conversions. We don't have to look far for some examples of disasters with data conversions and ERP implementations. These are all big projects, but they're the ones that get all the press, and they're good examples here. Revlon, when they acquired Elizabeth Arden, they decided to move to SAP S/4HANA. Well, that whole implementation failed. It resulted in losses of about $64 million US. Nike, they decided to convert to 3 different software programs in 2000. They put in SAP for their ERP, they used a different supply management program, and they used Siebel CRM. Major problems with them resulted in a loss of over $400 million and a 20% dip in stock value. And lastly, Waste Management, which is probably the most famous failure of an ERP implementation. It took over a year, and the implementation project the test environment, the pilot took over a year. The project was abandoned after 18 months, and they sued SAP for $1 billion and reportedly realized about $770 million, but the losses were more than that. So data conversions, they take that perfect picture of growth and they distort it, and sometimes very, very seriously. Costly data conversions are, a big part of problems when you grow. So folks, Convertophobia is a made-up name, but it's real and it's perfectly logical. So I want to go back to our top challenges. We've kind of talked at length here about conversion issues. I want to talk about software functionality now. Entry-level software is called that for a reason. The functionality is entry-level. It assumes small business, and it assumes small business simplistic needs. But that's not always the case. Some small businesses are quite complex. And because conversions are difficult and scary and expensive, companies that grow and outgrow the entry-level software, they use it for a long time, much longer than they hoped. So that lack of functionality, it leads to excess work, a slowdown in operation, employee dissatisfaction. It can really affect your growth. So in the next part of this presentation, I'm going to turn to Acumatica and suggest how it can address these challenges. I'm going to show you how growing companies can help to avoid convertophobia and can provide enterprise-level functionality right from the start. And I'm suggesting that Acumatica is an ERP solution that, frankly, I've been looking for a long time because it's affordable when you're small and it scales to when you grow. So it's one ERP from startup to enterprise. So let's talk about Acumatica's design and how they support growth. Acumatica designed their software to support business growth, and they do it in like several ways. which I want to talk about here. So first of all, knowledge is power. And Acumatica believes that power belongs in the hands of their clients. So Acumatica University is available to anyone at no charge at all. I recently published a post on LinkedIn about a phase in our implementation projects called preliminary training. We used to spend considerable time training our clients on the basic understanding of the software. We called it preliminary training, and we did it because we wanted our clients to have some knowledge of the software before we asked them to make decisions on configuration. Without that basic understanding, how do you decide whether a setting makes sense or not if you don't understand how the software works? So this was necessary, and it added time and cost to our projects. Acumatica Open University completely eliminates the problem because our clients now can attend the courses on Open University. They come to us when we start the project with basic knowledge. That's a very smart move on Acumatica's part, and it's helped us a lot. The other one is fast start deployments. They're really a great idea for many smaller businesses. When you're getting started, you can get up and running much quicker using the fast start approach. What is that approach? Well, basically, there's pre-configured settings. The chart of accounts is the chart of accounts. Item formats are defined. Customer and vendor number formats are defined. Workflows and other settings are standard, and you get these standard ones. The idea here is to get clients up and running quickly and using the system. And when you use the system and as you grow, you can change these settings. You can refine an improvement, but you're up and running quickly. And this has been a very, very effective approach for people using Acumatica. I'm going to spend a bit of time on the next 4. So Acumatica is designed for different industries. So no one product, it's like no ERP is one size fits all. You know, software is often purchased and 75% or more of the features are just not used. We were recently talking to a client, and that was a major concern of his. You know, I don't want to buy all this stuff that I'm never going to use. A manufacturer will need functionality that an online retailer would never use. So Acumatica offers the first 5 additions that you see on this diagram as bundles of software that each of these industries is likely to need. A manufacturer will get a bundle of modules most commonly used in that industry, and they have the ability to add other modules if their business crosses into other editions. An example of that crossover, the 6th edition you see on the right-hand side, is really Charon Mining Solutions. We call it the Mining Edition. And what we did with that is we started with the Distribution Edition. We added things like a mining chart of accounts, mining specific workflow and reports. So now we have Acumatica Distribution Edition suited to the mining industry. So it's a really smart approach. These additions, they support growth by not forcing businesses to buy software they don't need, yet it gives them the flexibility to add specific software that may be unique to a particular business. The other way that Acumatica helps with growth is they don't use per user licensing. And the reason for that, it really comes down to a simple thing. An ERP system is most effective when many different users use it. And that might mean that some individuals, maybe a lot of users, access only a few features of the software. Well, with a user-based ERP, you're buying a user license for every single one of them. Some of them have full user licenses versus data entry licenses. I've seen those over the years, and they never really worked that well. So basically, you're penalized by adding users to the system. Acumatica says, okay, we don't care how many users are on the system. We're going to charge based on how much you use the system as an organization. And it's really quite simple. They take these 9 or 10 measurements that I have in front of you, the number of sales orders, shipments, AR invoices, AP bills, etc., in a month, and the highest one of those measures becomes your consumption level. And that's what you pay at, that's what you start working on. and away you go growing your business. This is a very, very effective way to do business because it really just get everybody onto the system. The next area is fairly new to Acumatica, and that's this concept of, I call it levels, where industry additions are directed to specific industries. The levels are directed to different sizes of companies. So let's walk through them. The first level is the essentials level. So this is the only level of Acumatica that has a user restriction. And that is you can't have more than 10 named users in the system. And the reason they did that is that the second point about advanced functionality, it's so advanced, so economically priced. If they didn't have a limit like that, it would be something that companies just use forever at a very, very low price, and it wouldn't be competitive with the market. So that's the only one. But the point about this is you start as a small business. You can buy QuickBooks with very limited functionality, or you can buy Acumatica Essentials. It's a little bit more expensive, not crazy, and you get advanced functionality right from the start. But as you grow, the different levels really work well. So with the select level, you have no user limit, but it's typically suited for organization up to about 50 employees. It's got a limit on the number of consumptions, your level of consumption, the number of transactions, and that's why they make that recommendation of usually up to about 50 employees, and it has more robust functionality. The next is the prime level. Again, no user limit, typically for larger organizations, full functionality with really no limitations there. And when you become Tesla and you want to take over the world, the enterprise level is amazing, and it handles very, very large organizations with full functionality and specific resources in the software, in the design, in the environment to support very, very high volumes. So that's the end of the one ERP from startup to enterprise. Is when you get really big, you do not have to move, you do not have to convert to a tier one software solution, because Acumatica scales quite well. A different way to look at this in the licensing guide of Acumatica, which is available for free download to anybody. They do have this diagram, and the spikes in the diagram basically are the different levels I talked about. The light blue circles in the middle are the different industry additions. And the dark blue is the resources that are specific to enterprise organizations that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But I do want to talk about another thing in the licensing guide that's called price protection. So right in Acumatica's licensing guide, they commit to a maximum price increase of 10% year to year. Now, this is actually a big deal because we've heard many horror stories of increases in the range of 40% to 60% for some ERP companies. Acumatica doesn't deal that way. They're not punitive to their customers. They will increase the price, with an economic decision, but they also limit that. And the other thing about Acumatica that I really like as a consultant is they publish a customer bill of rights. So in very, very clear language, they lay out details about fee structures. They commit to no long-term commitments. As a matter of fact, every contract with Acumatica is 1 year, which you can renew. But it's, after 1 year, you can leave. They're not going to tie you in. And a key point here in the Bill of Rights is that the data is owned by the customer. And I would challenge you to talk to other ERP vendors to see whether that's the case. They may state it. ACPAC takes action to make it very, very easy to get your data at any time. Okay, and then the last topic I want to talk about, just in terms of how Acumatica's design supports growth, is enterprise level security. So this slide lists some specific details here, but it really comes down to the fact that security is very, very important for all businesses, and Acumatica handles this with two levels. Application level security, which Acumatica achieves through roles. So that's a system where Every person is able to view, create, and work in a system based on who they are, securely with two-factor authentication and other security measures. And then the second level of security is infrastructure. Acumatica makes no bones about it. They use the world's most secure infrastructure for SMBs, and that is Amazon Web Services. Now, again, it's worth mentioning here that that's one deployment of Acumatica. It's a flexible company. They're open to other deployments, but their commitment on the SaaS deployment is enterprise level security from small business to enterprise. The system is reliable. It's always up and running. It's servicing thousands of customers right now today, tens of thousands of users and hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions, all without any security breaches. All right. What I'd like to do now is move to a bit of an example and how a company might grow using Acumatica. And I'm going to use a mining company in this example. It's an industry I know very, very well. And it's also an industry that has a very, very clear growth path. And that growth path is called the mining lifecycle. It consists of 4 phases, which can take years and years to travel down, but it's so clear, and the organization changes along the way. So at the first phase, it's called the exploration and assessment phase, and this is where companies, are looking for minerals. They have exploration teams out looking for gold, looking for copper. They'll assess any ore body that they find to determine things like, is this going to give us a potential mine life? What's the quality like? Can we make money if we start mining in this location? In a lot of ways, that's very similar to any small company. Basically, they're just looking for a way to get started, and the needs are quite simple. The next phase is, okay, hey, they found a good ore body, and it's time to start developing the mine. In this phase, they really change into construction companies. They now have all the requirements of a construction ERP, and because they want to get the mine going. And then when operation starts, that's when it really gets active. You have hundreds of employees. You are actively extracting the ore through a process of blasting, crushing, milling, extracting from other methods. And then lastly, no mine lasts forever. So at the end of it, you've got to close the mine, you've got to return the property to nature, and in some cases, you may have to have ongoing operations to maintain certain equipment, certain structures that you've put in place there. So it's very clear, and the organization changes, and you can see the need for an ERP would change with them. So because today I'm talking about growth, let's talk about the first 3 phases. So the exploration phase, it's much like other smaller companies or startups. There's no revenue at this phase, so it's all about accounting and accounts payable. And if you look at this first little table here, it's hard to argue that entry-level software or the back of a napkin or a bunch of spreadsheets is going to handle things pretty well. But small companies, especially mining companies, have other characteristics that challenge entry-level software, even if the organization is quite small. Mining companies often have multiple companies involved, and multi-company functionality can be really quite limited with entry-level software. Fixed assets is another example of that. Small number entry-level software might handle it fine, but sometimes you need more advanced methods for recording very expensive fixed assets that might be purchased in a company, even though you're quite small. Expense entry for remote workers in a mining company, in a construction company, is really essential. It either works in a very poor environment or it works with really high functionality like Acumatica, so everybody can connect effortlessly to record their time, record their expenses. An important point here, and the only one that I've got a no flagged, is invoice processing. Usually in entry-level software, the automatic reading and detection of invoices and automatic entry into the ERP is not handled in entry-level software. But the volume of accounts payable bills can be astounding, even when you're small. So, entry-level software, looking at the bottom line, it's certainly affordable, but what could be better? I think you know where I'm going with this. Acumatica Essentials level really addresses line by line every one of these issues. Starting at the bottom, for basic functionality, the budget is higher but similar to entry-level software. And point by point, it provides all of the functionality needed for most small businesses. So the key points here is that there's much more functionality that can be added. What I'm showing you here are the basic functionality that out of the box Acumatica Essentials will handle no problem. But you can add more. You can add Outlook plugins. You can have detailed inventory, purchase orders with shipping, manufacturing. Everything can be added without leaving the Essentials level. You can stay for a while. If you don't need more than 10 named users and your transaction volume stays relatively low, you can stay here for years. But in every case, in every measure of functionality, you'll see the word advanced. So a purchase order process in the Essentials level, it has the same advanced functionality as a purchase order process in the enterprise level. The difference is volume of transactions and perhaps number of users. So really, we see that the second limitation of entry-level software functionality is solved with Acumatica Essentials. But I don't want to dwell on small companies because we want to move on, right? So first of all, I want to define a bit more what I'm talking about with advanced. So Acumatica is advanced in almost every way. First of all, the system. The underlying technology, Acumatica has been described more as a platform company than an ERP company. In Germany and Australia, for instance, country-specific software that's not named Acumatica has been built on the Acumatica platform. So it's a solid design. Other companies have used it, and out of the box, advanced technology is available for all sizes of companies. A couple of things that I bolded there: full workflows out of the box, automation to run processing off hours out of the box. I think in these days, it's illegal to give a presentation without mentioning these two letters of AI. Everybody's talking about it, but the fact is that Acumatica has included AI and machine learning for a long time. They've got some great functionality that you see here, like business events are very, very powerful. You can monitor business processes, and based on your needs, you can take actions. Anomaly detection is a powerful tool that you can teach the software that says, look, if this certain expense exceeds this amount or this happens, this condition, I can take some action. And there's intelligence text solutions, just as some examples here. If we look at finance, Canadian dollars out of the box, about $600 a month. Again, you get everything that you would expect in an accounting package, but you also get some really advanced things like multiple ledgers are very, very important. Statistical ledgers are powerful because financial and budget ledgers can track dollars. Statistical ledgers can track non-financial things like the number of loads that you took to the dump, the number of deliveries that you made if you're a delivery company, the number of products produced. Statistical ledgers are very, very powerful. They don't have to balance. They're just quantities of things. Multiple ledgers are not available in entry-level software, and out of the box, you get them with Acumatica. And I mentioned AP document recognition before. Included with the Essentials, you get 50 pages of accounts payable invoices. You can simply get your vendors to email to a certain amount. It gets read, scanned, and put into the system for you to handle later. You can move that from the 50 pages to unlimited numbers just by purchasing additional amounts there. Okay, so let's look at some of the industry editions. I talked about construction. Construction is actually the fastest growing industry segment for Acumatica and for Acumatica's competitors. And professional services is related to this. It's been developed to address firms like engineering and consulting firms that are often associated with construction. So construction edition, again, out of the box project accounting, you get what they call construction foundations. So compliance is included there. So lien waivers, insurance certificates, that's all handled. Advanced subcontractor management. And you can also add construction project management, where you would handle things like change orders or daily field reports or photo logs. Now, quite often we found that our clients have that already handled by construction specific software like Procore and Autodesk. Those are not ERP solutions, they're not accounting solutions, but they handle those things like change orders and things like that. If that's the case, that's no problem. You don't need to buy the construction project management. You just use one of the fully integrated connections and you're connected with Procore or Autodesk. Okay, so construction edition is about $1,000 a month. Professional services is a bit more because it gives a lot of functionality related to professional services firms and also has construction functionality because that's the industry that they're targeting there. One thing that it does include out of the box, resource management for managing all your consultant with Gantt charts for projects, task lists, resource planning. So very advanced functionality. Distribution edition, we've done most of our work with this edition. And as I mentioned before, we use this edition to design our mining solution. It's about $1,200 a month. And again, that's with nothing added, that's out of the box. Lot and serial items are included often with other products we work with. You have to add that with a third-party solution. Kitting, matrix items, unlimited warehouse and locations, all standard. And the manufacturing edition, very successful edition for Acumatica. All of the core stuff's included. And the MRP is one of those examples that says, okay, well, when do I need to move from Essentials to Select? Well, if you want MRP, it's included in the Select level. Or if you want to stay on Essentials, because it's the only thing you need to add, you can just purchase and add that to the Essentials level. Okay, so we're talking about growth, so let's talk about when do we want to move up to a new level. Assuming that we're at that mining company in exploration, and now we've moved ahead and we're starting to really kick into gear here. So if you need more than 10 named users in the system, that's, like I said, that's the only level that's limited. You need to move up to Select. If your consumption is starting to get higher, so Essentials gives you 2,000 monthly conversions, transactions that I described before. Select, the limitation is 5,000. Prime, it kicks up a lot to 20,000, and Enterprise is unlimited. And then another reason why you might want to move up to another level is specific functionality. So in very, very, very few cases, there are some limitations of the functionality. For instance, the number of inventory items is constrained in the Essentials edition, as are the number of assets and the number of integrations. I can tell you that they're constrained at a very high level, but they are. So you could exceed those. If you want seasonal increases, Acumatica is very flexible with their pricing and they offer seasonal licensing. Well, retail companies in Christmas time, their transaction levels explode, but in other times they don't. So in order to have licensing that's suited towards seasonal increases and decrease without paying a huge amount of money, more money like you with other ERPs, you need to be at the Select level and above. Okay, so there's some considerations, and let's look at this in light of moving up from Essentials to Select. So some of the examples of additional functionality you would get, if you have multiple companies, Essentials will handle that perfectly. But if you have multiple companies and they have different functional currencies, and you want those all in one system, you need to move to the Select to get that. There's also some more advanced distribution planning, payroll over 250 employees, advanced manufacturing. So there's some functionality reasons to move, but when you move, what's not required? Convertophobia. There's no data conversion required. You're simply changing the licensing. Now, all of the functionality that you're currently using, there's no retraining because it's exactly the same interface. It's the same user screens that you've looked at. All of the current functionality, there's no change to that. Where the conversion to a new ERP, that all has to be redone. There's no different user interface. As I mentioned, it's the same, and there's no forcing of reluctant users to change because they're using the system that they've always used. Okay, I think I'm drilling this point home a bit here, but let's just talk about moving to the prime level. So again, you would really do that for some pretty sophisticated functionality, integration with Exchange that's more common with larger organizations. If you really want advanced authentication methods, that's available in the prime level. And Acumatica Flex is something that's available at the prime level. So worth explaining this one. So Acumatica will keep you up on current versions, and they will they have an always current program. So small improvements and releases throughout the year, you're automatically upgraded. They always give notice to you and to us if we're your consultant, so we can prepare if there's any backups that we need to do. But also, they will take care of upgrading to the next version. With Acumatica Flex, some large organizations do a lot of customization and they don't want to upgrade. Acumatica Flex allows that. Okay, so that's available to delay upgrades because of other complications you've got in your system. Again, sounding like a broken record, what you don't need to do when you move to the prime level is any of the Convertophobia stuff. You just change the licensing. So I want to talk a bit about the enterprise level, because what we find in our clients that get really large is that tendency to move from software that's reasonably priced to $1 million tier one software. And you really don't need to do that in a lot of cases. In some huge cases, it's required, but you really don't have to move. And for mining companies, it's a common misperception that the only way to achieve the processing power on the high end is to move to tier one. The problem is affordability, and our proposal is that with Acumatica, you can achieve the functionality that you really need at a tier two budget. Okay, so what does Acumatica provide for companies when they get really big and the number of transactions increases? Well, there's SaaS reserved resources. So these are things like transaction boost, parallelism, concurrency. This is not a course on IT, but all of those things help with performance. There's also processing nodes. Okay, so if you have a lot of transactions going on, processing nodes can be added to boost transactions for operations, like pulling data out for reporting, web API requests, scheduled processing. Other ways that larger companies can address scalability are here. Dedicated SaaS. You can be on your own server just for your company. That can be arranged. Sandboxes. So we see this quite often. It's normal that we would have a live environment and we'd have a sandbox for things like testing and upgrades. But what if you're doing a lot of ongoing customizations? You might want to have a development sandbox available 365 days a year. Okay, that's available with the enterprise level with these additional resources. Data storage, increased data storage is available. So again, I want to bring up this idea of licensing methods. So now you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of users on the system, and you don't care, because really what you care about is volume. And Acumatica, using this type of pricing, really stands above the rest by making it affordable. But in those rare circumstances where your user count is quite low, actually, but the volume of transactions is incredibly high, those type of businesses do exist. And Acumatica offers flexibility for special circumstances like that. For organizations like that, per user pricing makes more sense. Therefore, Acumatica offers it. Okay, so walking through those scenarios, I've tried to paint a little picture here of two growth scenarios. The first one is start small, start with entry level, and convert as you grow. And the second one on the right is get Acumatica and get rid of Convertophobia. So the first one has a low initial cost. Acumatica is a little bit more initially, but not crazy and not out of this world. You start with limited functionality in the first one. You start with advanced functionality with Acumatica. You quickly outgrow the system if you're growing with the first approach. And with Acumatica, you just never outgrow the system. First one is Convertophobia all over it, and the second one is nothing but love. So that's our story. I want to thank you for taking part. If you are looking at ERP software, please talk to us. We really think Acumatica is a great solution for you. And if you're at the point where this is something you can do quickly, I do want to mention that there are some good offers and opportunities available from Acumatica right now. So Q4, it's the end of their year. This is when software companies tend to offer a bit more, and there's some great reductions in the annual software licensing costs between 10 and 25% in the first year, and then declining in the second and third year. Now, again, on that point, you're only committed for 1 year, but you can arrange for discounts for year 2 and 3 if you renew. Now, I spent a whole bunch of time telling you not to convert data. And if you move with us from your system to Acumatica, you're going to have to do some data conversion. So we're going to help you with that. We're going to put on our psychologist hat here and help you with Convertophobia. We'll give you a fixed cost for the conversion to Acumatica, and we'll calculate that cost at 50% of our normal billing rates. This is effective this quarter, so it's got to be done by December, and we would be ready, willing, and able to start working with you in next year in Q1 or Q2. Frankly, we could get started in late Q4 of this year as well. So with that, here's my contact information. If you have questions that you didn't have a chance to ask during the session, or if you want to talk about your operation. And Susanna, are there any questions in the chat?
Yes. So the first question is, how much does the price go up every year?
So I mentioned the idea that Acumatica gives you a guarantee that it will not exceed 10%. But that doesn't mean it goes up 10% every year. As a matter of fact, over the past several years, the average increase has been around 3%. Now, I was approached by a friend of mine who has been in the mining industry forever that's using a competitor, and he came to talk to me about Acumatica because his price increase was going to be 60%. So Acumatica, it's going to go up every year. 3 to 5% is something you might expect. It won't exceed 10.
Thank you, Paul. And yes, there's another question. You said that the price is based on consumption. What happens if we are over our consumption limits?
Yeah, so this is an area that we have a lot of fear expressed when we talk to people, is sure, we can afford this now, but what happens when we really start to use the system? Well, Acumatica is a very fair organization. I love dealing with them as we're an independent company that supports their software, but their approach has always been very reasonable. So they're going to give you reports on your transactions. You can get those reports yourself. I can get them. How much of your consumption limit are you using? If you start to consistently exceed it, it's not like the lights go out. Nothing changes. You're not, your system's available for you. If you're really using a lot, you might notice that the performance is a little slower, and that might be one reason to bump up. But Acumatica will send an email if that happens, over a period of 3 months or so, and they'll recommend that you move up to the next tier. Eventually it will be something that they'll say you have to do, but they do it in a very reasonable manner. It's quite fair how it's handled. And just as a point of reference, of all of our customers right now, the single highest consumption usage from the bare bones out of the box consumption that they bought is about 45%. So none of our clients are getting close to exceeding the level that they purchased when they first got Acumatica.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. I don't see any further questions.
Great. Thank you so much for attending today. As I mentioned, here's my contact information. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.